You are listening to the East Texas Banner right here at easttexasbanner.com. Got the privilege today of sitting down with a man some of you guys may not be aware of over here in the East Texas area, Bobby Tillman. Some of you may, some of you may not. He is currently running for state Senate, for Senate District 3 for the Democratic Party. And so, man, I really appreciate you driving over here, man.
Not a problem.
And sitting down with us. And
I appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Having this conversation.
It's an honor to be here.
Good deal. So tell us a little bit about about your history, man. Where are you from?
My name's Bobby Tillman. I'm running for state Senate here in District 3 in East Texas. I used to think I was a fifth generation Texan, but I really didn't know what generations meant. And I found out I'm a sixth generation Texan. So my great grandfather came over here, and we've been here ever since. Now that's on my grandmother's side, so it's not the surname that Tillman, but I'm still living here. They came here in 1880, and they established about 3,000 acres in a little community. The town was called Fincastle at the time, which is no longer there. And then they opened up a community called New York, Texas, which that's where I say that I live at, but it's just a community. And the actual town is LaRue. Okay. So I was raised by my father and mother. They were great. I've had great parents, and my mama passed, but my dad's still alive. My dad was a sharecropper when he was a kid, believe that or not. I mean, he picked cotton and picked tomatoes, and they traveled all over the place. So he was illiterate until he met my mom. My mom taught him how to read. Wow. He got into the flooring business, and when I was a kid, 3 years old, I knew I was going to be just like my dad. I had no desire to go to college or anything like that. My dad wanted me to. I went to Texas Tech for one day. I called my dad and said, "Dad, listen, man, I'm just going to get out and do flooring with you. Sure. We were going to open a business together. Yeah. And he got the opportunity to get off of his knees. So he had a meeting with me, and he said, son, this is a good deal for me. So he went off and got off his knees and started supervising. So at 18 years old, I opened up my first business, and I've been in business ever since. Wow. I've been doing floors. I do commercial. I've done residential, I've done everything, but I do commercial floors. I do Dick's Sporting Goods, Kohl's, Targets, Walmart's, the big stores. Travel nationwide. The last 5 years, I call it semi-retired. I settled down. I used to run 100 to 120 crew members, running jobs, and it's just the stress and stuff. And so I just I got out of it and just started running 2 or 3 guys. That's what I do now, kind of semi-retired. I work when I need to. And as of the last few years, I'm needing to work. Yeah. But 16 years ago, I started raising cattle. And I got into that. Yeah, they're cows. You just put them out in the pasture, they'll take care of themselves. So that is not what having cattle is about. So it's a full-time job. So right. Anyway, that's I make most of my living off that now. I'm just a calf producer. Okay. So I'm sorry, guys, the beef is high, but the calf prices are where they need to be. That's so right. That's I'm sorry, but the cattle prices are high. I mean, the beef prices are high because there's 4 major corporations that are in control of it. So, sure. But that's beside. But anyway, I'm no Eagle Scout. I mean, guys, I've got a history, and I've got a colorful language sometimes, and I apologize for that. I'm doing pretty well, sometimes. But I was raised by ex-cons and Vietnam vets and drunks, laying carpet since I was a kid. And but since I was 18 years old, I've been in charge of $100 million jobs, at universities and stuff like that, doing the flooring for them. Right. So I got into politics because I have a son. He's a Army veteran and a Texas National Guard veteran, and now he works, over 100 hours a week just to pay rent. Yeah. I'm still helping him with his car insurance because he can't afford car insurance. And I want to be a grandfather. Yeah. And we talked about that, and he's like, "Dad, I don't see me making enough money to support a child, in this life, and so it's, having to have roommates and stuff like that to pay bills. It's just tough." Yeah. And so that's what I got into it for. I just I want to help out, and I'm a people person. Whenever I'm not around everybody, I'm by myself. Right. I like to be alone. I inherited 100 acres. I've got rescue dogs and cattle, and I go out there and I just kind of be by myself. And I got into this because I want to help somebody. Right. And there's no better way to help than get in politics. I'm not a politician, guys. This is the first office. I didn't even run for school, school council.
Right.
This is something, and I'm not a polished speaker,
Right.
so but I do the best I can.
No doubt. So tell me this, man. So you're running on the Democrat ticket.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That election. I mean, this election for Senate District 3 is going to come up in November, I guess.
Yes, sir.
If I'm right. What's kind of, what's your thought about the state of Texas right now?
The state of Texas right now, to me, it's we're going towards making laws and helping out the corporations.
Okay.
I'm for the middle class guy, the unions, middle class families and middle class businesses and unions built America and built Texas. I see that we're straying away from it, more and more each day. I see our schools, this voucher system, I don't get it. I'll never understand it. And even if you do like the voucher system, look in your county, see how many schools you got. I don't even think there's one here in Jasper you can go to. So out of 18 counties, I think 15 counties are without the private school that'll accept the vouchers.
Okay.
So and I just believe that each district is different. I think the Jasper kids are different than the Lufkin kids.
No doubt.
I think they're different from the Jefferson kids. So we need to have local control over our ISD boards, and not the right now Houston's taking over. Putting people in over in Beaumont, and Beaumont's not Houston.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a disaster. So
Okay.
I want to get back to helping out the regular folks.
Right.
So
what do you feel like? I mean, if we're looking at it from a regular folks standpoint, right? Because I'm not a politician either. I spend a lot of time in oil and gas, and I know that about having to remind myself not to use 4-letter words sometimes. I get that. I get that completely.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like are your top 3 kind of focuses? Say if somebody's going to elect or vote for Bobby Tillman.
My number one thing is going to be the economy. And a lot of people I know are running. Everybody right now is running on taxes.
Okay.
The property tax. My biggest concern is the economy. Which, if you get the economy in there, property tax is part of it.
Okay.
So we got to get these younger generations access to better jobs, higher paying jobs, and better care. Health care and better care for their children. I've already written a bill that I want to file. It's to help. We're going to go from affordable child care to free child care by 2031, I believe it is my plan to do it. And that'll bring like $15,000 back to each family. That'll also free up somebody to go to work to bring in more money. I'm for raising the minimum wage. How high, I don't know, but I think it's definitely $7.25 an hour in Texas is embarrassing. That's, I've run small businesses and I have to start my guys off, $15, $18 an hour just to make them even close to fair, which to me, that's even too cheap. But I understand that if you raise the minimum wage, everybody's going to say, well, the cost of everything is going to go up. Well, that's yes and no. You don't know it until you do it. So, but you got to be able to help the people out. And then my next deal would be education. The education is just what's going on right now. It's, guys, I'm just an old rancher, and so getting into this, I'm still learning just like everybody else is. But the education stuff, our kids are our future. The education, we have to teach these kids, and every district is different. And so every kid's going to be different. So you have to teach them different ways. And they test and they test and they test and they test. And they're not teaching the kids how to read. They want to put the 10 Commandments in schools. That's great. But let's have the kids be able to read them. And if they can read them, let's have them understand them. So let's work on that. And teachers, the teachers, they're probably the most important people that we'll ever know.
Right.
And, I said that to somebody one time, and he's like, well, what about, these surgeons and stuff, brain surgeons? I'm like, really? Who taught the brain surgeon? A teacher did,
Sure.
So guys, we got to get the education back on board. And then this water, it's going to be day one issue. And then that goes back to the data centers. It's already an issue before I don't know about everybody else, but I'm just learning about these data centers popping up everywhere just recently.
Yeah.
But we've had this water issue for a while. And I went to the legislative summit in Nacogdoches the other day, probably a month ago, and Robert Nichols, which is the existing senator right now, he sat up there and said that he didn't know that this was going to be a crisis, and now he does. He's been in office for 23 years. And how can you not know that, millions and millions and millions of gallons of water going out daily to these big pumpers, is not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So now everybody wants to do a crisis on it. I believe it was, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 1999. They challenged the rule of capture. Okay, well, the Texas Supreme Court, ruled in and said, listen, guys, this is a legislative issue. You guys have the constitutional right to make laws about this. And so I don't want to change the rule of capture, I don't want to eliminate it, but we need to modernize it. It was based back in the 1800s when it was just about cattle ranchers and people feeding their cows and horses and stuff. So now they're taking all this water, and it's ridiculous. And as a Democrat, that's what I want to do. The Texas State Constitution, Article 16, Section 59, gives me the power to do it.
Okay.
And it's right there in the Constitution. We have the legal ability to change this and conserve it. And also, too, and if I can't get a bill filed under that, I want to reclassify it using a constitutional amendment to reclassify it as a life sustainable resource. I don't know anybody in Texas right now that wouldn't vote for us to change it to save our water. We're fixing to be without water. And my biggest issue, Democrat, Republican, is go back to all the Republican side. Their big donors are data centers. So Ford's the future is Meta. They're donating to Trent Ashby. They're giving him hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not saying giving him, their PAC is paying for promotional TV ads and stuff like that. That's how you do it. That's how they legally do it. They don't give him money. They promote TV ads and stuff. So
sure.
So that's guys. I'm here for both of us. I'm here for Republicans, independents, all three of us. Independents and Democrats. Guys, we got to get back together. I'm old enough to remember when we were just all friends and family.
Yeah.
We didn't sit around and bicker about red or blue. And that's what I want to get back to. I want to represent everybody in my community.
Okay, so let's touch base. Let's go back a little bit and let you expound on some of these key points. Let's go back to the economy. Okay, what do you feel like? If we're talking about the economy as it pertains to, if we're directly connecting that to minimum wage, is minimum wage in your opinion, is minimum wage the driver for the health of an economy?
No, I don't. Go ahead and finish your.
Well, I mean, my thought process is, minimum wage was not supposed to be, in my estimation, and I could be wrong on this, but it wasn't supposed to sustain. It wasn't supposed to sustain life long term. It was supposed to be kind of a ramp into workforce, because it's like what you're saying about hiring 100, working 120 hands. You already know in the flooring business, in the flooring world, what's going to be the competitive rate to be able to get a hand, right?
Exactly.
And so consequently, my thing is, if we're looking at some of these starter project or starter jobs out here, minimum wage, that's where the real rubber meets the road, because you as a contractor wouldn't be changing your handling of the marketplace based on minimum wage numbers, right?
I agree 100%. And like I said, from my understanding, just like what you said, it's supposed to be a starter job. The problem is it's turned into something that corporations are abusing to limit, to that's all they're going to pay.
Okay.
So that's my problem with it. It's not that I think, it's, everybody here starts off at a little part-time job or doing something, and that's, fast food, and I know the burger flipping people say they don't deserve this. You know what? Maybe they don't, because, they mess the order up all the time. I'm right there with you. I go get my dad Whataburger on a daily basis, and I have to go in there and literally go through each order that I do, and they mess it up. So I get it, but it needs to be something that, maybe we could set up something like, how they do waiters and stuff at some of the restaurants. They pay them $2.14 an hour or something, and they work on tips. Maybe we could classify, a fast food person, or a certain type of job. I don't want to pick on the fast food people, but certain types of basic starter jobs as a stepping stone, a lower minimum wage. But when you get up into into some of these jobs, at Home Depot and stuff like that, which, they do pay more. I get that. But, they're having to be told to pay more. and that shouldn't be something that's happening. So if you're going to have to be told to pay more, then the wage should be a little higher. It's set it up at $12 an hour instead of starting a guy at Home Depot for 15, maybe make 19, something like that. So it's just to help it's still a stepping stone to help other people.
Gotcha.
My biggest issue is just wages need to come up for the other people. These union jobs, they're the backbone. They're the backbone of our state, and whether you want to be union or not. I'm not union. I'm a right to work state guy.
That's the reason.
That's
what I was figuring to ask.
I'm a right to work guy, so I don't want to abolish either one of them. But saying that, the right to work has choked my career. It has made it to where I hire people and then I work them for 3 months, and then they go to work for themselves, and then they work people for 3 months and they go to work for themselves. So we saturate the flooring industry with everybody that's only been in the business for 3 or 4 months.
Right.
There's no certification in the flooring business.
Sure.
I said that to a plumber. Remember they tried to eliminate the licensed plumbers.
Mm-hmm.
Me and a guy were talking about that one day, and he said, "Floor guys, hey, you don't need this. You're just a floor guy." I'm like, a commercial floor guy is not what we call a house jockey. Right. We deal with chemicals, we deal with flames, we deal with.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we take carpet up elevator shafts underneath them, with a chain and a rope and no safety,
Yeah.
no safety issues, no nothing. We go to hospitals, around nursing homes, and we have all these open chemicals and flames and all this stuff, and there's no license. I'm not pro-government as far as restrictions, but there needs to be some kind of establishment where at least you got a capable person on the job. They came out with all this. We have to have these MSD sheets on jobs and stuff like that. They don't. It don't matter who has it. You can just hire somebody off the street, and have him do the sheets. He don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I just like I said, I'm not for regulations, but I think there needs to be something, in every industry.
So, I guess my question is, if we're talking about regulations and we're talking about, currently where things are at on the flooring side of things, or maybe even craft, we'll call it, craft construction, because that's really kind of what, to me, it's like, if you ever been around a professional sheetrocker versus one of these guys who just got something in the back of the truck.
That's where it goes back.
It is craft level.
That's where it goes back to having a license or something, or unionized.
Right.
That's why I'm pro-union, is because if we unionized the flooring industry, and maybe just do it for state contracts, and you can't do that because it violates the right to work state. But just you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what unions. That's their strong point.
Yeah.
Is they don't put people on the job that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and I know there's some issues back and forth, but this, that, and other on the unions. But I am pro-union, and even though I'm not, and I'm pro right to work, I think there's a happy medium for both.
Gotcha.
I think the small contractor, he doesn't need to be union. But when you get into these large corporations, like I worked for DuPont Flooring Systems.
Okay.
Everybody that worked there, that was we built up to that. It was the largest flooring company in the world.
Yeah.
And they sold the jobs and we just sold the labor. But they would put anybody on a job.
Yeah.
They're the cheapest guy with the truck and tools.
That's right.
And that's just, to me, that's just not right. That's why my son doesn't do this.
Okay.
I got into it with my dad because it was a trade. My dad was in the 70s. He was union.
Right.
He was a union president of the branch there in Dallas at the time. And I got into it, and you started off, and every year you stepped up a notch. Every year you stepped up a notch. And that's just the way we did it. And then it went away, and I tried to get it going again. I've written my congressmen and my senators and all that stuff throughout the years, trying to get a little help.
Support. Yeah.
Never heard from any one of them.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm running. Guys, I'll give you my phone number, my email, my address. You come by and talk to me. Tell me what you want to talk about. We got to get this. To me, we got to get this. We're trying to make these corporations all this money and feel like they're so important that they're the king of the world. They're the ones that we need to idolize and take care of, and it's not who we are. We need to take care of ourselves and the middle class. The working independent contractor people down here, they're all over the place. That's what builds Texas, the small business. So that's what we need to keep going. We need to boost the small business economy instead of the corporation economy.
Okay. Do you believe that there is a do you believe that there is a balance between major corporations and small business? Because, some people would say, yeah, small business is the backbone, but most small businesses getting contracts from your Teslas and your bigger corporations to do a lot of work throughout the state because the state.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm
What do you
saying
say?
is these larger corporations, they're bidding them out and they're pre-bid. Like say in the flooring business, they bid out a job.
Okay.
Well, if you're not on the list,
Preferred vendor list.
well,
Yeah.
it's not even that. It's through the say you want me to go to and I want to buy the carpet from Shaw.
Okay.
Okay, so I call Shaw and get a price. They go, "What's your name?" And I tell them who I am. They're like, "Oh, well, we've already shopped that out to these other 3 shops."
Okay.
So, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what's the price anyway?" So they give me a price that's I can't compete with just
Yeah.
to buy the material.
Yeah.
And so they already have the list. They already know who's going to go it. They put it in and you look at the architectural deal, and it'll have a preferred installer. These are just installers. I mean,
Yeah.
just independent contractors. They'll put the preferred installer on it because they've worked in them before. That's who's going to get the job. To me, that's just not fair. It goes back to these big corporations. They're picking Tesla. I don't want to quote them, but let's say Tesla. They're going to go and hire this other large corporation, and they're just going to trickle it down to the contractor that actually does it.
Right.
So corporations are taking care of corporations, and the little guy's getting left behind.
Okay.
So,
All right. So let's go to education for a minute, and then we'll talk about the differences between what you represent versus what the other parties representing currently. But let's talk about education a little bit.
Okay.
What do you believe is if say you're elected, what do you believe is the fix for child illiteracy?
Well, I think the fix for that is we got to start them off young. That's one of the reasons why I want to do a low cost, eventually free childcare. And it's not just childcare. I'm not calling it a babysitter. I want to be. Sure. I want it to be a pre-learning. In my experience in my life, I'm a dad. I'm a single dad. I'm a single father. I raised my son alone his entire life.
Okay.
There was a wife involved, but like I said, she didn't participate with a lot of it. And at 6 years old, I had full custody of him.
Gotcha.
But while he was in school, I had him in kindergartens. I had him in private schools and all that stuff because I do work, and I needed him to be somewhere. I had him in a learning center in a very well-to-do neighborhood that's a well-known place, and he went to kindergarten in public school, and I got a call from the teachers that I need to talk. He failed kindergarten.
Okay.
I'm like, how do you fail kindergarten? How do you fail kindergarten?
Sure.
They're like, well, he doesn't know his ABCs.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, well, that's impossible. What do you mean you don't know his ABCs? And they're like, well, he don't know his ABCs. So, of course, I brought him home and tried him. He didn't know his ABCs. Yet I had at home, somebody doing flashcards with him, supposedly on a regular basis. And then I had him in a $1,000 a month preschool.
Yeah.
That was supposed to learn. I'm sorry. It's a preschool learning center. And he didn't know his ABCs, and I didn't find this out, for a year. And so after that, I went ahead and held him back, which he's my only son. What's an extra year at home going to hurt?
Right.
So I held him back. And once you reach a certain level, everybody's told me, and what I found out from experience is once you reach a certain age, you learn how to read different. At 3 years old and 4 years old and 5 years old, you learn a certain way, and you get to 6, 7, and 8 in there, it's not the same.
I got you.
You have to be taught a whole different deal. It takes a lot of special teachers and tutors and a lot of extra stuff to do it. So that's why I'm big on I want to start them young. The kids they're at a young age, they're like sponges. I mean, they just eat it up. And I said that to somebody, and they were Republican. They were arguing with me. They're like, well, that's state socialism, and all this stuff. And I'm like, guys, I want to help the kids. And they're like, well, let their grandmother, watch the kids for them and help them teach them. Not everybody has that access. I was fortunate. I had a family a friend, family, my best friend, his wife had 4 kids, and she was a stay-at-home mom. So when I had to travel and stuff out of town, he got to spend over there, and she helped him and stuff. And I had the ability to pay for tutors and stuff like that. But when you went back to school, all they worried about were tests, the STAR test, the STAR test, the STAR test, the STAR test. And this kid that can't read, having these issues, and that's all he worried about. It's the anxiety that it brings to these little kids is just nuts. So we got to get rid of these. If you want to do all these testings, do them in high school or something like that. I'm against all these testing because I don't think a kid is a test.
Yeah.
I think it's what he learns. Kids learn different, and some people don't do good testing.
Right.
And my son was one of them. But it took until he was in the 9th grade to catch back up on reading, and now he's perfect. He's got no problems at all. But like I said, it took all that time and special education and meetings and accommodations. They didn't want to give him accommodations. Unfortunately, I have a friend she's a special ed teacher. She told me all the things that I need to tell him, and they got him his accommodations, and it helped. But then it goes back to the test.
Yeah.
They didn't teach him. Yeah. And so while my son was in elementary school, he'd go to the elementary school, and I'd pick him up and take him to a tutor.
Yeah.
And so the tutor taught him how to read and write, and not the school. So that's something that you talked about. What do we do to get it? We got to start them young.
Yeah.
It's like I said, by the time they're in the 3rd and 4th grade, it's not too late, but it's almost too late.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
So tell me this: you're running against Trent Ashby, and outside of the funding that he's been able to raise, like you referred to a minute ago about some of the data center funding that he may be receiving. Where do you disagree?
I disagree on the education part of it. Like I said, I'm not going to mudsling with Trent. Like I said, I've met Trent. He's a good man. He's a good husband. He's a good father.
Sure.
He's also been a good representative for his district for 13 years now. I don't particularly agree with the route that he's going, but he's not far right. I mean, a lot of times he votes on the Democratic side, and but like I said, he talks about being against the saving the water. I haven't found anything that he's done, other than say that he's going to save our water. He's had 13 years to save our aquifer. He hasn't introduced any legislation to change it yet that I know of. The schools, he's real strong about getting the 10 Commandments in schools. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if that's what everybody wants, in your school district, that's more than happy for it. But I'm more concerned about teaching the kids how to read it than I am getting it in there. And I think you're going to open a Pandora's box with that. I think it's going to go through court battles, and I think if you're going to put one religion in school, you're going to put all the religions in school. That's just, I
think I share that same sentiment.
I think you're shooting yourself in the foot on this one.
I really do. I feel the same way because, to me, if we're talking about fairness and we're talking about everybody having a fair space, then what happens when the atheists want their own space? What happens when the devil worshippers want their own space?
Like I said,
that's just what it is.
You're exactly right, and I think that's
a good question.
That's where it's going to go. And also, I think there's going to be loopholes. Okay, say I'm a teacher and I want to put, I'm mandated to put the 10 Commandments in my classroom. I put it in Spanish on the wall.
Or you put an outline of Sharia law over beside it.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? So
exactly.
To me, here's my thing. My dad was a preacher, so I understand the sentiment, but I don't think this thing has the arc that everybody's going to want.
Okay. Let's say a 9-year-old in the 3rd grade comes up and asks you about adultery.
Sure.
Is that really a teacher's responsibility to explain adultery to them?
Good question.
I disagree. I know I don't want my son being taught from a teacher on these things. And it's just like I said, I just think it's a Pandora's box where it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
So that's where I think about that.
So other areas of disagreement, you disagree with him on the water situation, or your position on water, your position on schooling.
The voucher system. I don't know the exact thing that he voted for, but it wasn't. My understanding is he was responsible for the bill to not allow any more schools to become a voucher school.
Okay.
So that was his plan. My understanding is that was his plan to help, slow the vouchers down. Okay, well, we go back to there's 18 counties in my district. Okay, the last I checked, they might have added some more since I checked. I mean, everything changes daily, but last I checked, 15 of the counties don't have a school that's privatized that accepts these vouchers. Well, Trent had made it to where no new school can open up and receive the vouchers.
Okay.
It has to be existing schools. That way they don't flood all these districts with new schools. So guys, you're in District 3 here in East Texas. You're not going to get, unless you live in Lufkin or Athens or Beaumont, you're not going to get your kid into one of these public schools. Now you can get them homeschooled. They'll get you vouchers. There's only so many accepted. The other day they listed 76,000 kids less this year in public schools. To me, I think the Republican Party is trying to privatize education, and that's where I think it's going.
Do you think that's a bad thing?
Yeah, yes, I do. As a single father, I couldn't homeschool my child, and I couldn't afford to put him in a public school. A private school. Say you get those vouchers, that only pays for half the semester. Half the year.
Sure.
Where am I going to get the other, $11,000-$12,000?
But you did have tutors and everything else, though, right?
Well, yeah, but it didn't cost $12,000 a year.
Right.
And I didn't have to take him to a out of my way district. He rode the bus.
Yeah.
He rode the bus to school. My kid was a latchkey kid. He had a combination on the door. I put a combination where he could ride the bus. That way, if I couldn't get home in time, to pick him up, that he got a safe way home.
He was taken care of.
Yeah. So it's the busing system. It's that. Okay. Also, too, with the socialization, without public schools, how do you socialize? What football team are you going to play on? When are you going to find your first girlfriend? You're at home alone, and I get it. It's great for some kids, but not every parent is a teacher.
Exactly.
So,
I agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah. A lot of parents, they're borderline parents.
Yeah.
So you need this, you need the public education, to help and teachers. I think, in my opinion, they're getting undercut and underpaid because people know that they love their job, and so they're still going to do it, whether they're funded correctly or not. So, like I said, I'm about raising. They've raised the teacher's pay some. I'm about raising the basic allotment. You raise the basic allotment to where it's more national level, which that right there would automatically, per our Constitution, automatically raise the teacher's pay some, and it would stop some of this Robin Hood, where some of these school districts could keep their money and help lower the property taxes.
Okay.
And that's another thing. The property taxes is just it's crazy.
How would you fix it?
The property taxes, I want to stop the tax abatements that we're giving companies and the corporate welfare. I think the corporations are the ones that are receiving our children's education. We're educating our children to become workers in the economy later on. So corporations should they should help pay out the fair share of it. They're getting subsidies from Texas. Like ExxonMobil got $4 billion last year. Mm-hmm. Do we really need to subsidize Exxon? They're making billions and billions of dollars, but the state of Texas gave them $4 extra billion just to be here. I've had the comments made, well, if you start doing this, these companies are going to leave. As a businessman, if I go into a state and I can make $2 billion, and then all of a sudden you tell me I'm only going to make $1.5 billion, I'm going to leave. I'm still making $1.5 billion. To me, that's just a bad business move. Not to accept the 1.5 when I could accept the $2 billion. It just.
So then here's my question. Say you're running a major corporation that you've built up from a standpoint of flooring, okay? And then say Tennessee comes along and Tennessee says, hey, we're going to give you a tax abatement to the tune of X amount of dollars, billions. So you come here, you house your headquarters and everything here, and we want you to flourish here, and we want you to be in Tennessee with us and operate here. Do you feel like that's a bad business move?
I don't think it would be a bad business move, but I just don't think that it would have to be an incredible amount of an incentive to go there. Like I said, I just don't think I would leave something that I'm already making money at. If I'm already making money at, and I've already got the resources, I've already got the employees and all that stuff. But then that also goes back to the large corporations. I'm not a large corporation type of guy. I'm not.
You feel like large corporations are bad?
I don't think they're bad. I just don't. I think they're over monopolizing everything. Okay. I think there's too many. I'm more the mom and pop type guy. Yeah, I get that. When I shop at hardware stores, I shop at the True Values, because they're smaller. I pay a little bit more, but you know what? I get better customer service. When I go to flooring stores, if I want to go buy something, I don't go to these big giant people. I go to the small guy, that I buy from. I just believe in shopping where you live.
I got you.
And like I said, I'm not going to lie though, I do shop at Walmart because that's just a one-stop shop.
Sure.
And I'm not promoting Walmart on this, but like I said, it's just something that I can go and I can buy my dog food down to my socks and underwear at the same place,
Yeah.
But I just don't think these large corporations, they're the biggest welfare queens in Texas. We're giving all this money away to these corporations, and I don't believe in the trickle down effect.
Okay.
I'm old enough. I don't know how old you are. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but when Ronald Reagan come in and all this stuff, and everybody's, oh my God, we're going to make all this money. Get all these billionaires all this money, make them money. They're going to give it. It don't work that way. It don't work that way in my business. I'm a partner with somebody, and like I said, I put a budget together on a job. Say the job pays $100,000. I put a budget in there. This is what labor is going to cost. I want to pay out all that labor.
Yeah.
If the guy's finished and it's cheaper, I give them bonuses. My partner, on the other hand, oh no, we're going to stop that. We're going to do. We can keep this money, and it's like that's not how I feel, and that's not how I want to be. Myself personally is, at the end of the year, if your company has a bunch of money at the end of the year, if you can keep it and not pay taxes on it, you're going to keep it. But if you're going to keep it and you have to pay taxes, you're going to spend it. You're going to invest it back into your company.
Sure.
You're going to buy that new machine. You're going to buy that new truck. You're going to
Right.
give that guy a bonus. It's the trickle down effect doesn't work that way. And right now, they're giving these companies stock buybacks and all this other stuff. They're incentivizing corporations, and they're making corporations the backbone of Texas. And I disagree with that.
Okay.
I'm not against corporations. I'm against monopolies.
Gotcha.
I'm against these taking over everything.
Gotcha. Okay. So for people out there who want to get to know more about you, where do they need to go? What do they need to do? I'm assuming you've got a website.
I've got a website. It's Tillman for Texas. It's number 4, not FOR, which I don't know why I did that, but it just happened that way.
That's what it is, man.
I did it and it happened and I got it, and then everybody told me, oh no, you don't need to do that. I'm like, oh, it's too late. Anyway, TillmanforTexas.com. I've got the website. I've got all social media. For some reason X and I don't get along. I don't know if they're shutting me down or whatever. I get one post a week that somebody sends me, and that's it. Instagram is pretty hot and heavy. TikTok, I get tons of responses on TikTok. But Facebook, I've got a Facebook page. It's Tillman for Texas. Get on there. My email's on there. My address is on there. My donation page. I'm running my own campaign.
So you don't have a campaign manager?
I don't have a campaign manager. I don't have volunteers. I don't have nobody. And my thing is I'm not going to lose the election. The District 3 is going to lose if they don't pick me. So this is y'all's option. I'm naive when it comes to politics because I actually thought that politics was volunteer. Until I got into my 40s, and then I'm like, wait a minute, and then I come to find out a state senator. Do you know how much a state senator makes a year?
No.
$7,200.
Yeah, I knew it was a small stipend.
It's a part-time job. But let me ask you the same question here. Do you know how much he makes on pension when he retires? He makes the same as a district judge. They base it on $140,000 a year. So Mr. Nichols, when he retires here after 23 years, he's going to receive from you and me as taxpayers almost $90,000 a year for the rest of his life for a part-time job of $7,200 a year. So Trent Ashby, when he gets in there, and he's already 13 years, if he wins the Senate, he'll be 17 years. He's going to make close to $70,000 a year for the rest of his life. Oh, and these are plus medical. Okay, they're based on a district judge pay of $140,000 a year, and every year it multiplies every year that they're in there.
Wow!
So I am strong about term limits. Okay, I want term limits. I don't think anybody needs to be in any state of office anywhere for more than 2 terms. So that's it. Maybe a state representative because they're only 2-year terms. Maybe do those 4. 8 years. I think 8 years. If I can't accomplish what I needed to accomplish in 8 years, I don't need to be in office anymore.
Gotcha.
So, and that's the same way I feel about Trent. Like I said, I'm not going to badmouth Trent at all. Me and him hang out. His wife, he's got a wonderful wife, Nikki. She's a great person. We go and we talk and hang out at the functions. We don't hang out together. He's, him and I are not on the same social fields.
You're on the same card but different parties.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not even we're different parties. But we're not. You're not going to see. He's not going to be at a bonfire drinking beer with me out on the ranch.
Right,
It's just like I said. I've been around the block a time or two. And I've been there, done that, and I never aspired to be a politician, especially a state senator. I'm not going to lie. I was intimidated when I first got in this. You start meeting these people, and your whole life, you're like, oh my God, he's a senator. He's a senator. We're just people.
Sure.
We're just people. You get up there and you start talking to them, and they're just daily people. And it's just, I'm not a college educated guy, but I'm a what do you call that? The School of Knocks type of guy.
School of Hard Knocks.
School of Hard Knocks. I've been around. I've
very familiar.
There's not a whole lot of things I haven't done. I've made all the money I've ever wanted, and I've been broke. There was a time when my son wanted to be in the school band. He needed a trumpet. I didn't have any money, so I had to go to the pawn shop and pawn one of my guns, to get him a trumpet. And it's one of the worst noises I ever heard in my life for the next year.
Sure.
So anyway, it's I've been there. I understand what it's like not to have medical insurance. I don't have medical insurance right now. My medical policy right now is don't get sick.
Yeah.
So, I want to help out with that. I want to expand Medicaid. They're closing hospitals down left and right in rural East Texas. And it's just that's because they didn't advance the Medicaid, and they did that because they think that it's too much federal control over them. But it's killing people.
Yeah.
It's and that say even the hospitals that are around, if you're pregnant, you have to go to the big cities to get the medical attention for maternity. Let's go back to veterans, or to veterans. Veterans, their medical access, yes, it's government and all that with the VA, but their closest access is San Antonio or Shreveport. What about down here? You have a mental crisis. So I want to legalize cannabis for veterans. And people ask me about what about recreational? If that's what you guys want, I'll vote for it. I'm not going to, establish a bill and go in there. I might co-author one if that's what the people want to hear. But I am for helping veterans. If a veteran can go get some marijuana by using his veterans card and not have to go to a doctor, and wait time for next week and get this, he can take that veterans card and go and get some edibles or whatever and relax and not kill himself. That's what I'm here for. Like I said, my son's a veteran, so I'm real big about veterans. Veterans health, get them some stuff. I want to help them get these schools. We have a law that we're supposed to put police officers in schools to help out now. A lot of the districts are, a lot of them aren't. We got Abbott putting the National Guard. There's 15,000 troops across the state, working on the border, working on ICE control and all that stuff. Let's put them in our schools. Let's move them off that. The border's under control right now, and let's put them on our schools. And people say, well, they're not policemen. They can't play. They're not policing right now the border. My son, National Guard, they want to go to the border because it's a $100,000 job that they get paid for being down there, and they're not allowed to arrest anybody. All they're doing is presence.
Mm-hmm.
They get to walk around and scare people. That's the same thing that they need to be. Now they can shoot people, in an emergency.
Sure.
But they can't arrest people, detain people, or something like that. Ask a veteran, if they want to do it. Ask a National Guard guy. If a National Guard could be deployed in his neighborhood to the elementary school that his kid goes to, would he want to do that? Or, does he want to go deploy somewhere else? And it's not going to cost the state any more money because they're already out there. The Lone Star, I think it's called Lone Star, some of these guys, he's got 15,000 National Guardmen across the United States working on immigration.
Yeah.
That's a federal issue. That's a federal government's responsibility.
How do you feel like the current federal government has handled that?
I think it's a travesty. Really? I mean, it's now. Don't get me wrong here, guys. I'm for legal immigration. I just think there's a pathway that needs to be easier. Like I said, I've known people and heard of people, that's been 30 years trying to do it, and they don't either have the money or they can't do it. A lot of them have getting Social Security card numbers. And they pay taxes every year, and they're working on getting their citizenship, and they don't have enough money to keep paying their taxes. Then they revoke that card, and then they cancel their citizenship benefit, their application. So then they're illegal. They have to start all over again. I just think we don't have to be cruel. That's what I'm saying. I'm not against. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against it. Yes, the criminals, they'll do this, but like I said, to me, immigration is a federal issue, and we need to let the federal troops and the federal government take care of it. And Abbott needs to stop spreading fear and stuff, and all this Muslim stuff that he's talking about. Let me ask you, where's the mosque at in Jasper? There's not one. So why is everybody worried about Sharia law and Muslims here? I talk to people.
I don't think people are necessarily worried about it in Jasper.
I got them up in my communities up there. I'm talking to them. That's one of the first things Republicans talk about.
Yeah, maybe so in your community. I think there is a concern for. I think there's a concern for how there's been a number of reports of private Sharia courts and things like that going on in certain communities in the state of Texas. I don't know necessarily if I know of any mosques here. I have no problem with.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But, okay, I'm against Sharia law.
Okay.
Let's get that straight. Okay,
right.
But I'm not against the Muslims if that's what they want to preach to the community, just like Christianity. If you want to go to your house and you want to tell your family that this is Christian law, this is what we have to obey by, and this is what to do, that's your religious belief. Now, is it legal in Texas? No. Well, your law that you want to preach to your kids and stuff is not going to be legal in a court of law in the state of Texas or in federal. The state of Texas has its own law, and that's going to oversee any other law that somebody tries to bring up.
Yeah, understandably so. I think the bigger concern is the erosion effect over time to say if Sharia law actually comes into play in local situations and people are more sympathetic to Sharia law who follow the Muslim faith get into office in the state.
Right.
How long of a slope is that before we actually start seeing laws being put in effect that are Sharia law sympathetic?
Okay, I 100% agree with you on that, and that's why I'm against any religious law being in the state of Texas.
Agreed.
Not just Muslim. To me, we're picking on the one group of people. To me, I'm totally against any law based on any religion in the state of Texas. The Texas state constitution, you don't have to base laws on religion.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you feel like that's what the current law is? You feel like the current law is based on Christianity?
A lot of it is. A lot of it, that's where they're going, yes. Putting the social study stuff, they're putting the Bible, history of Bible in there, taking that other stuff. They want us to learn about, that's a big, this is going to be a touchy subject, and people are going to hate me for it or they're going to like me for it. It's the schools and the history of the United States is not just based on Christianity. Is it a part of it? Yes. But is it 100%? No. It's a mix of everybody. We left to England because of that. We want our freedoms of religion, and it's not fair for me to tell you that you have to learn about one religion and you might not want to hear what I got to say, just like I might not want to hear against you. So that's something that's private. That's something that you do at home. That's not something I can guarantee you. I don't want my children or grandchildren to go to school and come home and tell me something that a teacher taught them about the Bible on their interpretation of the Bible.
Right.
Because everybody knows the interpretation of the Bible is to the reader. Everybody, I've heard, 10 different people you talk about a certain verse and they got 10 different outcomes of it, so then
I think I've had those same conversations.
So like I said, it's a touchy subject.
It is.
And I don't want to offend anybody. I think just religion is something that should be sacred to you and your family.
Gotcha.
Like I said, that's why I don't tell anybody my religious beliefs because I don't feel like it's any of your business.
Yeah.
And it's
that's kind of an old school way of thinking about it though.
Yeah,
there was I was talking to somebody here a while back. There was a day and age where, you would stand in the line to go vote and nobody knew who they were voting for.
Exactly.
Now we got T-shirts, hats, and bumper stickers and the whole 9 yards.
I don't think people shouldn't wear their shirts and stuff and walk around and but I don't have $3.5 million either.
Yeah, that's true.
I got $20.
And I'm not even pointing that out. I'm just saying
I got you.
it's much more marketed, and we want to get a team. We want to get on a certain team, and we want to fight for that team.
And to me, it's social media. We go back to social media. Social media is one of the greatest things ever invented, and it's one of the most destructive things ever invented. So, like I said, we have friends and neighbors that are arguing and bickering and back and forth, and friends that you've known for 50 years that are hating each other because of what they said online.
True.
And like I said, I'm now, oh God Lord, I'm a politician now. I'm not going to make everybody happy, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to say some things that are going to come across the wrong way.
Okay.
But like I said, I am a progressive Democrat, and the reason being is because I believe in everybody's rights.
Okay.
I believe that everybody has the right to live and be happy in their own little community, in their world, whether no matter who you are, what color you are, what sex you are, what race you are, what sexuality you are. It's to each his own.
Okay.
Like I said, and you said that's kind of old school. That's what I am. I'm old school. I'm just a common sense type of guy.
Simple.
Like I said, I want to be common sense, and to me, it's not making sense what's going on.
Gotcha.
So that's why I got into it, because I'm just sitting there going, wow, what? I don't understand why they're letting this happen. And why are we doing this? So I'll always say, and I've always said it, and I always will. There's always a better way. Always. That's, to me, is progressive.
Okay.
That's moving forward. I don't want to be regressive. I want to be progressive. I want to, like, before a flood happens, I want to be active before it happens instead of responsive.
Okay.
I don't want to have to respond to a bunch of kids getting drowned. I want to be the guy that, hey, listen, this is what's, we already know, it's going to happen one day. Let's be responsive before it happens. Let's be proactive, not reactive.
Okay.
So like I said, there's a lot of flooding and stuff that comes down here, in the creeks and stuff. Maybe we need to put more reservoirs in, just to stop them up. I don't know yet. It's like I said, ask me a question about carpet or floor or flooring or cattle, and I'll give you an answer right away, and
yeah.
But like I said, I'm learning, and I'm not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect man, but this is to me, politics is common sense. It's, you need to speak and help out your neighbor. I remember when you went to somewhere and you weren't asked if you're Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
And I get that question now when I start talking to people.
Sure.
It's like, listen, and then when we sit down and we talk, they're like, wow, that kind of, you do kind of make sense. It's because we got more in common, than the billionaires that are running the state.
Gotcha.
It's three or four people own 51% of the wealth in America. There's a lot of people here that are having a hard time.
Yeah.
The SNAP benefits getting taken away. Guys, don't hate me for this. SNAP benefits, yes, can they be corrected, or changed? But my dad, for one, he's a MAGA Republican, hardcore. He was all for shutting them off. The abuse that's going on. Okay, he's got great grandkids that are accepting the SNAP benefits, and I'm not going to lie. I hope they don't see this video, but they won't know who I'm talking about. But the mother abuses the system, and she takes advantage of it. And so I asked my dad about it. I said, "What do you think about it?" He goes, "Well, she needs to do this. She needs to get a job. She's able to work. She doesn't need it." I said, "Okay, but if you cut them off completely, your great grandkids are going to go without food. And you're okay with that?" And he sat and thought about me and goes, "Well, no, I'm not okay with that." I said, "Okay, let's reform it." They're just using the loopholes in place. It's okay for corporations to use loopholes, but when the citizens use loopholes, for their advantage, it's all of a sudden it's a bad deal. Yes, it's a bad deal, and can it be reformed? Yes, but cutting them off completely, and stopping it, that's just wrong. It's the kids that are getting hurt, not that parent. You're not hurting that parent. They're already abusing the system anyway. They're going to figure another way to abuse something out for their own gain. But when the kids go without food, that's just wrong.
So let me ask you one question specific to that. If you correlate, businesses using loopholes to actual fraud in the SNAP world.
No, corporations not fraud and SNAP. They just use loopholes to run their businesses.
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're correlating a business using loopholes to individuals out here using loopholes to garner SNAP benefits. One's considered legal and the other one's considered fraud.
Right.
You want to clarify that at all?
Well, I mean, the rules, they're getting SNAP benefits. They're not just going down there and applying and getting them. They're having somebody look at them and see if they're acceptable or not. So they're just filling out the paperwork and whatever they're putting on the paperwork, and it's getting approved. They're getting approved. Somebody's approving them. Right. If that's approving, they're not committing the fraud. The people that are approving them are approving the fraud. We need to reform the way that they're getting it. Maybe reform the questions.
Gotcha.
They're just doing what they're asked.
Gotcha.
They're doing it's just like going to a county hospital. You go to a county hospital and there's all sorts of kind of different ways. If you answer the question the wrong way, you don't get the benefits. So they go down and they fill it out the right way and all that stuff. Those are the loopholes.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to say, maybe they're not loopholes. Maybe they're just experienced fraudsters.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, either you're telling the truth or you're not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, either you're being truthful or you're gaming the system and saying what the
But
system
if you're gaming
is.
the system, that means the system that's in place is not doing their job.
I got you.
So they need to reform the people that are approving it and make it stricter to get the benefits, to get them. Yeah. But saying that, you don't just come in there one day and cut them off.
I got you.
You
have to figure out a way to.
You have to figure out a way. Listen, guys, we're going to come out with a new plan. Starting September 1st, we're going to reapply for SNAP benefits.
Gotcha.
And have a better way to answer it.
Okay.
I just think that taking food away from children is just wrong. I mean, I don't care how you say it. It's just wrong. And I don't believe in socialism at all. To a point, like I said, everything's socialism. Your fire departments, and stuff like that. I mean, we all have some type of, socialism in our life. But I don't want government involved and stuff. But like I said, you got to help these kids, And like it goes back to saying, not everybody's a fit parent,
right?
And how are you going to address that? You answered that for me, and that's $1 million question. So,
well, years and years and years ago, I don't know how many years ago it was actually, but years ago, this is where your local church congregations would actually pick up the slack to be able to help folks
right.
who were in need.
Right.
And so consequently, that system has changed and that support structure has changed on some levels. Some of the biggest givers in this entire community are 2 or 3 churches.
Right.
And so, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of reform that could go around.
Yeah, it's
for everything.
It goes back to what I said before. There's always a better way.
Yeah.
There's always a better way. Like I said, I learned that in the flooring business with my dad. When in the summer times, he would work me with a different contractor every summer.
Mm-hmm.
He set me up a job, ever since I was 9 years old. Every summer I would work for a different contractor. And the reason being is he didn't want me to learn one guy's way.
Yeah.
He wanted me to learn this guy's way, then this guy's way, then this guy. And then when I got together, I put them all together. And still to this day, I've been doing flooring for over 50 years. And to this day, if you come up to me and you tell me you know a better way, I'm going to watch it. Because I've got people that they're just so hard headed. They're like, dude, I know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. If you can tell me how to do it faster and make more money and be easier on my body, then God, I'm going to listen to everything you got to say.
No doubt.
And that's the way my whole life has been. Is always about. I've been a time manager my entire life.
Sure.
How do I go do this job and make it less time and more productive to where everybody can make good money and it's less time?
Yeah.
That's what I've done my entire life is time management, and it's worked out, and it's been good. And like I said, I've made all the money I've ever needed, and I've been the brokest guy on the street.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to be out there, guys. And it's tough sometimes.
So for people who's wanting to check you out online, they need to go to Bobby Tillman.
No, Tillman for Texas.
Tillman number 4
Texas.
Texas
And
that's .com.
.com. Yeah, .com. TillmanForTexas.com. And if you just put in Tillman for Texas, Tillman for Texas on the name, it'll pop up. It'll pull my websites, my social medias. You can AI me or whatever, and the AI has a pretty good response of my platform and stuff. So just hit AI. Yes, I use AI, guys. I'm not anti-AI. I think AI is going to be like the railroad. My analogy of that is, you remember, or I don't remember because I'm not that old, but when the railroads came in, they raped and pillaged and took all the land and property rights and took all the mineral rights and all this stuff, and they just abused the system and took what they wanted to. And then we regulated them, and now look at the railroad system. It's a booming industry-wide, helping America out. It's getting things moved, and it's helping the world, the economy, in a tremendous way. Everything, we're on AI right now on this video. We're using AI right now. We use AI on a daily basis. Our banking systems, our electricity banking, our gasoline systems, everything that we do is AI. So I'm definitely not AI against it. I'm for progress. Like I said, I'm a progressive type of guy, but I am for doing it correctly.
Yeah.
These data centers can be done and have been done correctly and sufficient to where they're not hurting the environment, they're not taking from the, and they're also producing for the economy.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, it's just a flood of them going in everywhere, and they're just taking everything they can get, and they're getting tax abatements, and they're getting 10-year tax abatements. Well, most data centers last 7 to 10 years. So what is these cities getting out of this if they're going to be gone in 10 years and they're not paying any taxes? They're bringing 4 jobs after they're built. They're running on AI. But they have a fluid, I think it's called dielectric fluid, that they can submerge them in. That's not water. It's like a coolant that's good for electrical stuff and all that stuff. Then you'll get into the pollution issues. You have to, there's just so much more research we need to do. And, the cities that I'm going to, they're signing NDAs and all this stuff, and nobody knows what's going on. I just want transparency, and I want it to help the community. But I don't think you need to put a data center in somewhere that the community don't know about and didn't vote on. It's not my business to tell Jasper people, ain't no AI going in here.
Yeah.
And no data center. And that is not my job to do that. That it's the people that live here, that's y'all's responsibility to stand up and say it. I'll go and speak for you. I'll be your voice. But if y'all want to vote on it, that's great. But what they're doing right now, the city councils are voting on it.
Here's okay. So that brings up an interesting point, because there's a situation in the state of Texas about property rights,
right,
and the issue about the CCP owning a slew of farmland throughout the state of Texas. And around here, we're kind of having a little bit of the same glimpses into some of these property right issues, because, say you have an oil and gas company, they decide they're going to go in and they're going to come and drill. All right. And they come and they set up their leases, or on their own property, they put in these wells, right? Then they start injecting, you say they're injection wells, right? Produce water back down in the ground and all that stuff. At what point now granted, on drilling and stuff like that, obviously the Railroad Commission's a big part of that. But like with the data centers, say a data center comes in and at what point does it move from being private property ownership to this is the right of the people and the communities to vote on this to come in? Because I'll be honest with you, it's just like the CCP conversation. I can't begrudging a family who sells their property at top dollar to a data center and walks away with cash in pocket. And now the data center owns the land. Now, I know that that's not how some of these things are working for us leases,
I
but the leases are the same point. At what point, where's the threshold?
I agree with you on that. Like I said, and I believe I own property and I have the right to sell my property to whoever I want to.
Right.
That's my
Or
business.
lease it.
Or lease it to whoever I want to. That is my deal. Now, what it goes back to is the data centers, out in counties, there's no zoning and stuff like that, but there has to be some kind of state restrictions on pollution and taking of the water and stuff like that. If a data center wants to go out there and they don't produce they can prove that they don't produce any type of pollution, and they're not going to take any water from the aquifers, and it's going to be in the county, that's their business, and that's the property owner's business too. But when you come in there and you build a data center, I don't care who you are. If you build any kind of plant anywhere and you're polluting the environment, there has to be a restriction on that. Somebody has to be able to step in. Whether you're
you have the EPA and those.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's where the restrictions come from those. So those are in place. But yeah, you have the right to do it. You don't have to have the public vote on that. But they're putting these data centers in cities, to where in these neighborhoods and stuff like that, where you have noise pollution, you have pollution, and you have the electricity grid is the consumer is paying to rebuild the grids so they can get electricity. It's costing you more electricity because they're building more grids for them. They have to be some kind of self-contained. They have to create their own energy, solar panels or something like that, and not taking the water. You can't take our natural resources from us. I don't care where you live at. What county you sell your land to somebody, they just can't take. There's in the Constitution the taking clause. You can't just take stuff from other people. And if you're taking my oxygen from me, that's a violation of the Constitution. It doesn't specifically say oxygen, but it's there's stuff. Okay. Like I said, I'm a constitutionalist. I want to go strictly by the Constitution. But like I said, property rights, that's even with the water that's under it. I got no problem with the rule of capture. You can have all the water you want for your ranch and for your personal use. But when you start taking it out and you have billions of gallons at a time and using it to cool off your electric your servers, and wasting it and pumping it back in the deal with all the pollutants and forever chemicals and stuff like that. The more we learn every day, the worse it gets. This is just something that's just coming out now recently, and it's because there's so many that are just popping up.
Yeah, it's hot topic right now.
Yeah, and it's the way I get it. AI, but these AI centers aren't just AI. They're not just for artificial intelligence. They're for crypto coins and stuff like that, bit mining and all this other stuff. And they are exactly what they say, data centers. They hold data. These flock cameras that are going out everywhere, they're collecting information and they're putting it in the cloud stores and stuff like that. That's what these are for. They're not just to help out with artificial intelligence. They're here to save our data and use our data so that's a whole nother. I mean, that's a whole crazy scenario and all that. But I had the opportunity to do solar. Mm-hmm. I had people offer me $90,000 a year to put solar on my place. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good thought. I mean, that's $90,000 a year, and they're going to put a fence around it, and they're going to put goats on it and eat the grass and all this stuff. And I'm like, but I live here.
Well, I mean, it's either that or you go be a senator for 23 years and then retire. Well,
there you go. So I'm 60. So when I'm 80, I can retire, for the next 6 months and get, That's right. And before I die. But guys, I'm not going to live. I'm surprised I'm alive at 60. Like I said, I'm not going to lie, guys. I've lived a life. I've been single since 2009. So most of my life, I've been a single gentleman living a single man's life, so I've had vacations. I've had a great time. I've done it. I've seen it. I've done it. Like I said, I was raised, sitting on the tailgate, drinking beer at a bonfire, listening to Hank Williams Jr., with all my rowdy friends, getting just as rowdy as they were. So I've been there and I've had an enjoyable life, and I was set. I mean, I was in my comfort zone, me and my rescue dogs and my cattle and stuff, sitting back watching the rifleman every day, minding my own business. And everybody asked me, why'd I run? Opportunity. I had the opportunity to run. So, like I said, and that goes back to, the donations and stuff. I'm a grassroots guy. I don't take corporate PAC money. I won't take it. But I've never had the opportunity. Nobody's come up and offered me $100,000. Nobody's offered me $1,000. Yeah. I'm getting the $5 here, $1 here, stuff like that. I'm financing most of my campaign by myself. My biggest thing is I don't think money should influence elections. I don't think that you should be able to outspend your opponent and win. And that's what I think Trent's doing to me. I mean, he has the ability to advertise on TV, radio, signs. That's great. That's fair. More power to him. But I'm going to come out and meet people. Whenever I come here a while ago, I went and got me something to drink and use the restroom. I went to Walmart. I met 4 or 5 people over at Walmart. Talk to them, give me a call, tell me what you need. I want to be here for you guys. I'm 60 years old, and until this year, I've never once met a senator in my life until this year, and now I'm running for office. That is literally our job. You work 5 months every other year, and the other 12 months a year, so 12, that's 17 months a year, whatever it is. Well, my math ain't right. Anyway, you're supposed to go out and meet people and understand what you want to do. I've never had anybody meet me. I've never had nobody talk to me. Never seen any event. Hey, come meet your senator, or all this stuff. They travel around and they talk to the Chamber of Commerce and stuff like that, and they do their stuff basically for their own jobs that they have anyway. They're running. It's a part-time job, so they work somewhere else. So they're involved in their community, promoting their businesses already. But we're supposed. That's what I want to be. I got me a little 30-gallon, a mile of the gallon car. I drive around. Of course, everywhere it goes, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. Texas is big. 18 counties is huge. But it's the experience of a lifetime for me.
You got any events coming up? Some meet and greets and things like that you're trying to get set up?
I'm trying to get some stuff set up here in Jasper. Okay. I think you have a place called Cedar Tree.
We do.
Is that what I've been?
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to get a place in Jasper, meet with some Orange County people and some Newton County people and Jasper County people. We're trying to get a little deal. I don't have the exact dates. We're having a crawfish bowl down in probably be in Orange County or maybe Jefferson County. I'm throwing a crawfish bowl for me and Jackie Hernandez. She's down there running for something in Jefferson.
I'm actually supposed to be interviewing Jackie.
So she's a pistol. Let me
tell you, brother.
She's a firecracker. So
yes,
she's a good girl. So we're gonna have a crawfish bowl. Like I said, come out. I just had a Taco Tuesday on Cinco de Mayo in Palestine. It's when I do the bowl, it's on me. I'm going to furnish the stuff. I'm not a crawfish cooker,
right.
And so I don't know how to do it. I'll probably kill some people. I don't need that on me. So
sure.
So we got some guys down there. They're going to, they're Louisiana boys or Beaumont boys. They're going to cook it and all that stuff. We just got to find a place.
So if there's somebody out here who hears what you're saying and they're resonating with what you're saying and they want to help you get set up in Jasper to do a little meet and greet and that type of thing.
I would love to come down here and meet you guys, have a meet and greet. We'll go to I don't even know if the Cedar Tree will let political people have a deal. I don't know.
There's a room in the back.
That's what sure, somebody had told me. I think it was, I believe it was Newton County. I can't remember exactly the county chair that said that, she's going to try to get together. I believe it was Newton County. She mentioned it. And I just assumed that she already had something. But anyway, I mean, I'm a big Mexican food guy. So
we got Mexican food places around here.
I can eat Mexican food. I can eat tacos every day for the rest of my life. And then for breakfast, I'll just make a breakfast burrito.
That's right.
It ain't Mexican food to me. It's that. And
no, so all they have to do, if people want to know more, go to Tillman for Texas.
TillmanforTexas.com. Tillman for Texas on social media, Tillman for Texas in your AI, Bobby Tillman for Texas. Like I said, I'm taking donations, volunteers. I did talk to a gentleman yesterday that I'm going to get with. He's a super intelligent guy. I talked to him on the phone. He's going to start helping me do some stuff.
Okay.
But meet and greets is what I want to do. And even if it's just one person, I'll come to your house.
Yeah.
I'll sit down and we'll talk. I need to know what you need me to do. Like I said, I'm not going to be the loser of this if I don't win. It's you guys are. I agree in democracy. If this is what you guys want, if Trent Ashby is the man that you want, and you think everything is peachy keen and it's going just fabulous the way it is now, because that's exactly what it's going to continue doing. It's just going to keep. He's on a steady ride, and like I said, he's a great guy. So he's a great guy, good husband, and good father. That gets the respect for me. That the husband and father part, that's a big deal with me.
Sure.
And so Trent, he's a good guy, and but I just disagree with some of his policies. And there's not that many policies that we disagree with. It's just the ones that hit hard.
Yeah.
The big ones. He's to me, he's too. I don't want to say passive, because he's not. But I want to say agreeable with the crowd. He goes with the flow of what's expected of him in Austin. And I'm not here to make Austin. I'm not here to make everybody happy.
Gotcha.
I'm not here. I'm going to fight for you, you know. And the big thing is, if the lieutenant governor doesn't get changed, I'll never get put on a committee. And I told that to somebody, like, oh, so you're just going to give up? I'm like, no, that's not what that means. If the lieutenant governor stays Republican, they've already done it to the other candidate that just won up in Fort Worth. I went blank on his name, but they don't give him a committee, you know, nothing, no assignments, and that's what their Republican proposals are, to give no Democratic people a committee. That's in the Republican voting on their priorities for the year. They don't want any Democrats to be on any committees. To me, that's just wrong. I mean, that's just, you need a mix. You need a mix of people. I want to reach across the aisle. I got no problems. Well, like I said, we got more in common than everybody else does. Sure. You know, it's we need to get back together, guys. Let's all this bickering and fighting and arguing. You know, let's save it for another time. You know, this is time for us to come back together. Let's regroup. Let's get things going again. And Texas is what, number one in debt. You know, with people, I think it's number one or number two with people having a hard time paying their bills. But we're one of the eighth largest economy in the world. You know, that make it make sense to me, guys. You know, it's and especially in East Texas, you know, this is not just a rural community. This is, you know, I just found out that $87,000 is considered low income. When you look at the school vouchers, you know, the people that are receiving it, they're supposed to be 500% lower income families. That's like $87,000. You know, there's a lot of people that don't make $80,000 a year in District 3.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty good chunk of change for this district, you know, and I love the people to death. And like I said, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
I just want to help, and I'm going to help. And as your next state senator, I'm gonna fight for you. I'm gonna be your voice. I'm gonna go to Austin, and I'm not just gonna bow down to whatever somebody says. If I don't feel like that's what you guys want, then I'm not gonna accept it.
Gotcha.
You know, that's it. And I don't care if you're Republican or Independent or Democrat. I want to be the voice for everybody. That's the way it used to be. You know, and this bickering back and forth, like, you know, saying no Democrat on a committee. That's just, how do you get the other point of view?
Yeah.
You know, like, it goes back to saying there's always a better way. You know, and the communication is what we're lacking right now. You know, we're turning into keyboard warriors and arguing and stuff to people that we don't know. I had a guy the other day got on my page, whatever, on Facebook, and because I say New York, Texas is where I live, you know, he told me I was a damn Yankee and I need to go back to New York and I'm a socialist and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I live in New York, Texas. And he kept bitching at me and complaining. Sure. And I'm like, dude, look, you live down the street.
Yeah.
You know, you're literally 20 miles from me. Have you not heard of the New York zip line? You know, it's literally one of the big entertainment things in this community. Right. You know, that was my great grandfather's land, you know, that's on. You know, and then finally he apologized. But then he still spit back out some other things, you know, negative to me. I'm like, I said, the saddest part about this whole thing is you're hating me because I'm a Democrat, but you don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
And I'm not that Democrat that what I've been hearing, because I have Republican friends. I'm not that Democrat that people are my Republican friends, MAGA friends are hating. I'm not that. I'm the old school Democrat that wants to help everybody out. I'm not this far left guy that wants this crazy, all this stuff and all this. I'm pro Second Amendment. You know, Democrats, we're going to take your guns, right? Yeah, you ain't taking my gun. So I use my gun on a regular basis. You know, I hunt and I have to take care of pigs and varmints and all that stuff on my land. But I agree with you. It's not the guns, it's the people. So saying that, we got to work something out. You know, we got to do some kind of changes. You know, I can leave right now and get over there and get online and go buy a gun from somebody here while I'm in town, you know, just off a classified ad. You know, there's no restrictions on it. You know, the Texas Gun Trader or something, I can't remember what it is, but you can just get right on it. And my son came home with a Mac 9 one day. I'm like, where the hell did you get that at? You know, and he's like, oh, I'm like, you're kidding me. You know, he just went and called a guy and went and met him at his house and bought this submachine gun. You know, it's a semi-automatic, but it don't take much to change it. I'm like, this is incredible, you know. And I'm I don't want to ban any guns. You know, I got AR-15s and AR-10s and all that stuff in my house. I don't want to ban it. We got to do something about protecting our kids.
So you believe that a person, if you wanted to sell me a gun right now, that ought to be regulated?
maybe not. You know what? That's a touchy subject. I don't know.
I mean, this goes back to property rights, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. But also too, it's considered dangerous weapon. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that.
I'd say selling land to the CCP is a dangerous weapon.
When you say CCP, does that mean China?
Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. That's what I thought you said, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I was exactly on that same page with you. And years ago, I went to Mexico. The first time I went to Mexico, I'm like, dude, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to buy me a plot right here on the beach.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get Sea-Doos and I'm going to rent them out and I'm going to retire, drink margaritas for the rest of my life.
Sound like a champ.
Come to find out, if you're not a Mexican citizen, you can't buy land in Mexico.
Yeah.
And maybe now you can, but at the time you couldn't. And I agree with that here in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't think if you're not a Texas or U.S. citizen that you should own any land here. Well, let's go back to that. The Saudi Arabia owns the largest refinery in the world here in Texas.
Okay.
So not just CCP buying up land. It's all, there's a lot of foreigners buying up land.
Yeah, well, see, so I guess the difference is, to me, all right, the difference to me is, Saudi Arabia owning a corporation that has, basically set up shop here, right? Versus buying thousands of acres of land.
But do they own the land?
I have no idea. I'm just saying we're in a position where either property rights matter or they don't.
I agree with you 1,000% on property rights belong to whoever sells it. But like I said, I will say I don't think any foreign entity should own Texas land.
Okay.
And I will say that for the rest of my life till I'm dead and buried. I think Texas land should belong to United States citizens.
Okay. So going back to the gun issue, if we're looking at one man going and selling a gun to another man, or one, whatever the case is, doesn't matter what the sex is. One human goes sells a gun.
Watch what you say.
I don't care. I'll call it. But I mean, what I'm saying is, you've got one human selling to another human, and we're talking about property rights.
Right.
And there's a weapon involved. Do you believe that needs to be regulated?
I am a Democrat that is less. I always thought I was conservative, by the way, because I always thought conservatism meant less government. I don't think that's the definition of conservative in Texas anymore. I think it's more conservative is more religious based, more Christianity based. Okay. So, but I'm a conservative. I used to think.
I think libertarian looks like more of a. It's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff.
Yeah,
right now.
It's all different stuff now.
Yeah.
But I consider myself a conservative. I am for less government and I'm less regulations and less everything. Now, taking that gun that you bought and you sell it to somebody else, I think that's your property. You can do what you want to with it. But the person that bought that gun from the store, I think there should be some regulation. And if they have regulation to sell it to somebody that is fit to own that gun, then they should have the ability to do whatever they want to with that gun.
Yeah, and I think
once it's sold from the store, from the manufacturer, I think the manufacturers hold some responsibility of who they sell the gun to.
Well, and not just that. I mean, there's obviously, I can go over here to the pawn shop and go buy a gun right now, if I pass the background checks and all the regulatory elements.
After 3 days, if the FBI doesn't get to it, they don't check it anymore.
Well, neither here nor there. All I'm saying is whatever the current regulations are,
I think,
me and you both can go down there.
I'm okay. I got no problem with regulations on it because I have gone and somehow my name got on a list. My son, Tillman, my dad, me, and we couldn't go buy a gun without waiting 3 days.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, the longest period we had to wait. And that's no big deal.
Yeah.
But here's another thing that I found out. I had a gun get stolen out of my truck in Greenville, Texas.
Okay.
I called the police department and I reported all this stuff. I said, let me go home and I'll call you back and I'll get you the serial number, so you can put it in your system, because it's going from a crackhead got it and it's going to the pawn shop right away. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I need you to put it on the list. This was, 10 years ago or so. And at that time, unless it's changed, there is no stolen gun list. So if I steal your gun, if I see a gun here and I take it, I can take that gun, I can go right over to the pawn shop and sell it to them without it being registered as stolen. Instead of putting it some kind of system in there that they put the number in there and say, hey, this gun, I can't buy this gun, it's hot, call the police.
Yeah.
I think there should be some kind of regulation on that, for a stolen gun list. Now, you can put it in the police report, If you have it, and if they find it later, they'll call you and give you your gun back. Okay, but there is no stolen gun list.
There's not like a database.
There's no database where you can do it, and that right there would stop a lot of gun theft and a lot of people getting guns, using them for crimes and stuff like that. I believe would help. Yeah. But like I said, I'm not about regulating anything. Now my biggest problem with the pro Second Amendment people is, I would be more for it if you fought for every gun, not just this AR. Everybody's wanting the AR. What about the machine gun? Nobody. You don't hear nobody saying, "Hey, listen, we have the right to bear arms. We want the machine gun too. Right. We want all the weapons. If it covers one weapon, it should cover all weapons.
Okay.
All guns. It's not just a certain breed of guns or certain type of guns. But like I said, if a manufacturer can sell it to you and it's your property, you have 100% to do whatever your property is that you want to. Okay, and that's just the way it should go. I don't want to regulate things, but like I said, we got to put some kind of common sense in who's getting it to begin with.
Gotcha.
So if it's a background check, a stronger background check, that maybe they know that you're mentally on some kind of drug or something, maybe you need to put a doctor's report. I'm sure that'll violate the HIPAA laws and all that stuff. So this is a touchy subject with everybody, but I'm not here about taking guns away from nobody.
Gotcha.
But like I said, when you start arguing about the AR-15 being for self-defense, that's a shotgun is self-defense. If you want, they're cool. I love to take mine and just shoot it and just as many times as I can shoot it, and then be done with it. They're just fun. They're fun to have, and
it's kind of like I know a guy who owns a cannon.
They're just fun to shoot.
It's a cannon.
Yeah. They're just fun.
I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
Shooting tannerite is a blast.
Yeah, exactly.
Firecrackers are a blast. They're fun. I say blast. I didn't mean to say it, but they're fun.
No pun intended.
Yeah,
right?
They're fun. They're fun. It's guns. I grew up with guns. I've had a gun since I was 9 years old.
Sure.
My son had a gun since he was 10 years old. But it's to me, it's more of a mental health issue than it is a gun issue, and so it is the people. But it's the access of ease to get them from. Maybe they're stealing them, or maybe they're,
who knows?
We have to do something to protect the kids. That's all I'm saying when it comes to guns. And to me, nothing but thoughts and prayers isn't going to work. I mean, I don't see anything stepping up to try to help them, other than they did. I think there's a House bill or Senate bill they put in where they're supposed to put an officer or whatever, but some of these rural communities don't have police force, so they have to come up with another way to arm their teachers, and I'm not real sure that's a good idea. I'm not against it, but it goes back to veterans. I think there's a lot of veterans out there that, could use some income, and walk around, and help the schools out,
Sure.
I think there's a lot of them out there that would do it, and I know personally, when my son was in school, I don't mind going and taking a class, and getting certified to do something, and just be a volunteer, guard, and I'm pretty sure the communities that I know of and people, I don't think there'd be a problem with a bunch of dads and moms, go and take the test. Let's not burden the teachers with it. They're already burdened a lot with it. Let's get the community involved in it.
Yeah.
And
Bobby Tillman, I appreciate you coming in, man.
I appreciate it too, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, you get my name out there. If you like what you got to hear, if you don't like what I want to hear from the people that don't like me.
Sure.
I mean, just give me a call, talk to me, tell me what I did wrong.
I think with all of this back and forth and animosity between teams and this type of deal is creating like a lane of people who is really kind of middle of the road.
But my biggest, like I said, it's let's not be Republican and Democrat. Let's be Texans.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I still believe in Texas. I believe in the people, and I believe in Texas, and I believe in the community of Texas. And this is not, to me, it's not who we were, and it's not who we are.
Okay.
I haven't asked you your political stance, and mine, but I don't care.
Yeah.
We've had a good conversation no matter what, and I have that conversation everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who I talk to. It's common sense stuff. We need better economies. We need better better medical benefits, better education, and our kids need to be able to have a future.
Yeah.
At 23 years old, I bought my first house. It was a non-qualifying assumable loan. Now, if you talk to kids now, they don't even know what I'm talking about. But that helped me get my first home. I don't think my son will ever own a home. I don't think he'll have the money or the job to pay for one. I think the median homes right now is $300,000 or something like that. It's incredible. Nationwide. Now down here we have different stuff, but you can't make the money either. These District 3 is unique. It has some big urban cities, 3 or 4 of them, and the rest of it is just rural country.
Yeah, the majority of this area is commuter based.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's how it's been my whole life.
And what I will tell you from my experience as an old man is the more money people make, the happier people are. Money don't buy happiness, but it sure does ease the pain a little bit. And when you can afford to pay your bills and you can afford to take care of your kids and you can pay for them to go to college and you can do all that stuff, it helps.
No doubt.
It helps.
No doubt.
And giving our kids a future, that's what I'm doing this for. I want to give our kids a future. So,
awesome.
Bobby Tillman, Texas State Senate here in District 3. Tillman for Texas. Look me up. Give me a call. Email me. Let's do meet and greets. I need volunteers. If you want to sign, give me a call. I'll get you a sign you put in your yard. Anything I can do to help, guys.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.